The young cats outlast the veterans of the Tampa Bay Lightning. And could the Charlotte Checkers this year be a lot deeper? We discuss that more on today's Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, October 2nd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who... My bad there. And thank you guys for once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And you could place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. You could get it all at FanDuel.com to get started. So the Florida Panthers go into Tampa Bay and defeat the Tampa Bay Lightning by a final score of 2-1 in overtime as the young cats go into Amalie Arena and defeat the vets of the Tampa Bay Lightning as the roster spots are still up for grabs. And the Panthers, even prior to this one, cut their roster down to 39 players. So still a lot up for grabs as the Panthers after this we'll have one more preseason game right before everything happens on opening night with the banner raising ceremony, and the Panthers improved to 4-3 in the preseason. And also the Panthers sustained the push of the Tampa Bay Lightning in the third period as the Panthers held on, and also 15 seconds into overtime, the Panthers go up the ice. Anton Lundell drops the puck off to Sandis Vilmanis, and then he gets the game-winning goal on Andrei Vasilevskiy, and the Panthers one step closer to finishing off the preseason and getting to the regular season. But joining me on this edition of the show to break down this game between the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning, even though it is past midnight here, but we are still in our hearts, it is still Wednesday here for us here on the show. Jacob Winans is back here on the show for another edition of Winans Wednesday here. And Jacob, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Awesome to be back. My apologies for missing one. Hit the IR for a week, but I'm back and couldn't be more excited for the start of the regular season coming up here. This is the best time of year, unless you're in the Stanley Cup final and winning the Stanley Cup final, which we got to experience. So I guess I'll say this is the second best time of this year, but I'm excited. This is awesome.
Yeah. And just one step closer, one day more, just 5 more sleeps as we like to say here for opening night for the Panthers here. But let's go right into it with talking about this game for the Florida Panthers in this 2-1 victory over the Tampa Bay Lightning, where it was a Panthers group that was facing off against veterans of the Tampa Bay Lightning for them. And really, when it comes to the Panthers and their neutral zone play on how well they were controlling gaps, and then just eliminating the north-south play, and then quick skating on their back checks, and then it's crazy the lack of seams that the Tampa Bay Lightning had really in the first 40 minutes too. I know I mentioned earlier about the push that the Tampa Bay Lightning had. I mean, after the first period, 15-4 in faceoffs, 15-4 in hits. I mean, Spencer Knight was outstanding. We'll talk more about him in segment number 2 about how his reads. But then you think about with guys who have stepped up in this one: Sandis Vilmanis, Patrick Giles, Zac Dalpe, Josh Davies. I mean, you think about just when you think about Stanley Cup pedigree once again for this Florida Panthers team, and then just the different roster spots up for grabs. I mean, guys stepping up. I mean, Sandis Vilmanis, Jacob, gets the primary assist on Zac Dalpe's goal from the point. A little bit of a touch pass back and forth, and then he scores on that. Not even a screen on Andrei Vasilevskiy there too, and then getting that game-winning goal. I mean, 27 goals in 30 games in the OHL last year. And just although chances are he's not going to be with the roster this year, but the fact that there's still so much flexibility with those entry level deals for Florida in Charlotte, which we'll talk about more in segment number 3. But man, what a hockey game, and for the Panthers to just, I know this doesn't mean anything as far as the standings, but just the fact that these young guys came to play.
Yeah, agreed 100%. And the key thing you said there, it doesn't mean anything when it comes to the standings, but any game against Tampa Bay means something. We know that. And what it means is you're looking for guys who can get into that rivalry, or guys who are going to make a presence for themselves against a mainstay on the Tampa roster, or just something that's going to light a spark, or something that's going to get the guys going. And then of course you look for the guys who can fit the system, and that's what you look for in preseason. But a game against Tampa, we've seen over the years how these preseason games can really add fuel to the fire of this rivalry. I mean, we were there for the infamous Orlando game. Nola Chari gets injured, but that game was full of brawls and fights.
They were getting out of their system, man.
It had to be a record for most penalty minutes in a preseason game that night. And that's just what this rivalry is about. So when you see guys like Josh Davies not scared to step up and throw a huge hit on the newly named captain of the Tampa Bay Lightning, Victor Hedman, that means something, because you don't often see Nikita Kucherov drop the gloves. And it got under his skin to the point where he immediately shed the mitts and attacks a rookie who's never played an NHL game before. And that's Nikita Kucherov doing that. That definitely means something. Vilmanis, the way he played, he's opening eyes with this camp, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it more. But you tweeted about this. It's smart drafting when you can see these kind of guys come in and make an impact, even though it's just preseason. Those are real NHL all-star caliber players they were playing against tonight, and these are young guys making an impact, and guys who have a chance to not necessarily make the roster right this second, but guys who are trying to make themselves really put themselves on the short list for an early call up, or if there's an injury, guys who can be trusted to fill in. It's really important. It's very, very important for these young players that aren't high picks. You're not expecting them to be superstars. You don't need them to be superstars, but guys who can come in and fill a role that you get later in the draft. And I think that's what you're looking for out of these guys. And I think the Panthers have found themselves a nice little crop of young players who are gritty, scrappy, can fit the system, can fill a role, and you don't need too much more out of them than that. And they showed tonight that they're capable. And we'll discuss some of their individual performances, but Davies, Vilmanis, Patrick Giles, who is an undrafted free agent, like these are guys that if you want to extend your cup window, you got to hit on some of those. And it's starting to look like the Panthers may have found gold with a few of these young depth players.
Yeah, and then you think about just the motivation for guys who are already going to make the team. I mean, we talk about this for Monday's game. I mean, the lack of physicality, and then you see the night and day with this one, with just more energy here for that. And then, I mean, I just want to mention Patrick Giles. I mean, you just how multiple times he's broken up passes, catching Nikita Kucherov once again off guard as he was entering the zone, had even a breakaway himself after Miklas Hovorka blocked the centering feed too, and almost scored there too. And also the amount of shot suppression too from, I mean, there was a point, I got to check natural stat trick, but there was a point where it was like 30 shot attempts, but 7 of them got on goal for one of the periods too. I got to double check the exact numbers there too. Zac Dalpe led the way in blocked shots for the Panthers too. And the fact that there's also experimentation with Jesper Boquist playing center, putting Giles on the wing and then back at center. I mean, we spoke about the faceoff numbers and how important they are, especially on the PK too. But also the fact that they were able to go a little bit through the motions there in this type of hockey game too. It's really mentally preparing them for the gauntlet of the season that's gonna be for them, and even for these guys who are going to be in Charlotte for the Panthers coming up this year too. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we are going to discuss more about the hit from Josh Davies on Victor Hedman, the reaction from it, Spencer Knight, and how he's performed, and also the craziest part of the game and the highlight of the game from a whole bunch of special teams in the second period. We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. And Game Time Picks, the curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concert, comedy, theater, and more. Seat views. You could get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time, the ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And I'd like to thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Wednesday going into Thursday edition of the show here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, as the Florida Panthers defeat the Tampa Bay Lightning by a final score of 2-1 in overtime, 15 seconds into overtime, as the Panthers once again are 4-3 in the preseason with one game left as they head to Quebec City to face off against the LA Kings on Saturday night from Quebec City. So the highlight of the game and the craziest moment of the game, I mean, we spoke about the hit earlier from Josh Davies, Victor Hedman. I mean, listen, I know we love Ryan Lomberg here on the show. And I mean, if there's a guy who's just a wrecking ball similar to him and who's just an exciting player who you just want to cheer for, who you just want to run through a wall for with how much effort he puts on the ice, Josh Davies. He's been someone that we've been talking about since he got drafted in 2022 and he got to his first development camp. That just brings the boom every time he goes on the ice. That hit. And obviously there's the code with hockey, just like unwritten rules of baseball about bat flips and everything. And I mean, the rule of you don't hit a star player or you don't hit a top prospect. There's that. But man, did that really help the Panthers not only get their power play goal when Kucherov went on the ice, but also forcing the Tampa Bay Lightning, their top prospect, he's still trying to do something for him, trying to make the team. You get the rare 2, 5, and 10 with the cross-check, roughing, fighting, and misconduct for him, for Connor Geekie. And the fact that the Panthers went from that to 2 penalties in the matter of 30 seconds to then killing it to then a minute of 5-on-3, but then how structured they were still all in that. Spencer Knight going 26 of 27, seeing through screens. And then at times, even in that penalty kill, you didn't even have to see him move much. His shoulders and everything. The blocker, just a little bit of movement, so calm and composed. And even in his answers in the media, Jacob, even after being in the players' assistance program, his maturity has skyrocketed so much, man. And you just gotta be so happy and proud of everything that he's overcome, that he overcame through all of this, and the fact that everything with that. But your thoughts on Spencer Knight and just that crazy sequence of special teams in the second period tonight?
Yeah, I was happy to see some heavy special teams minutes on both power play and penalty kill, because that's definitely a big question going into this season is how the Panthers are going to perform on the special teams. You lose your power play quarterback, you lose your top power play or penalty killing center. There's going to be a lot of guys who are going to be asked to fill those roles, and some of those guys definitely made their case today, because when you have those special teams minutes for depth players, you're pushed over the top when you're capable of playing those minutes. So, like, for example, you talk about Zac Dalpe leading the team in block shots tonight. He's a guy who he scores a goal tonight, but also he doesn't necessarily have a lot of eyes or attention on him. He's widely expected to head back to Charlotte. He's the captain of their team, but he comes in and he sets an example, and that means something to a lot of the young guys in this group. And then a guy like Patrick Giles, can he fill the Kevin Stenlund role? It's not a dude anyone that had any attention on. No one penciled him in as a potential Kevin Stenlund replacement going into camp. But if he can come out and eat some of these special teams minutes and be responsible defensively, that's something that could really open eyes of the coaching staff. The defenseman in particular, it's the positioning on the penalty kill. That's going to be really, really important because the Panthers are going to have a bit of a new look defense. It's all those little things, and you don't get to really see those unless you have those preseason minutes where it's difficult. It's special teams. It's those hard minutes where the young players can really get a chance to make a name for themselves in these situations. So I was happy to see that. I'm glad that the team got to get some of that special teams experience on both ends. Even though you don't necessarily like taking the penalty the second you go on a power play. Never ideal, but that's how it goes sometimes. And then you mentioned Spencer Knight, rock solid. There's not a whole lot to complain about with his game at all. He's rock solid. He's steady, and you can, if you watch his game, you can definitely see the influence that Sergei Bobrovsky has had on his game. There's no question about it. When he first came into the league, it was more so Spencer Knight's natural talent, his natural composure. You kind of felt like he was just playing on instincts. But now he's at a point where he's added some of that technique. He's added some of that the positioning and the things that you really focus on beyond just the natural talent and the instincts. And I feel like you have to have a really good blend of both. Bobrovsky is a perfect example of that. But you can definitely see how Bob's game has influenced Spencer Knight, and you brought it up. It's the calm, not flailing around, not flopping around, the calmly looking through screens, not overexerting and overextending. And if there's a puck he can get to just by reaching his shoulder up, lifting the blocker without having to move his entire body, he's not moving his entire body. He's staying grounded and lifting the arm. Those are the kind of things that young goalies don't always have, and that's why goalies take so long to get seasoned and spend time in the AHL. And his year in the AHL last year definitely served him well, or he got to take that starter's workload. Those are the kind of things that come with time, with experience, with development behind quality goalies and a quality goaltending department, the goaltending excellence department. And it's starting to pay off. I'm really excited to see what he does this season because Panthers have a much improved defense from what they had when he was last a full-time Florida Panther. Much improved, much improved structure, much improved defense. He's not going to be asked to save the day every night, and that's going to do wonders for his confidence. And you can see the stillness and the calmness in his game. It's exciting.
2021 feels so long ago.
Yeah.
I just remember him starting game 5 and then the smile through the mask. I mean, we saw the smile through the mask tonight for him too. And for him, just when you're passionate about something you love too, for him getting there and obviously everything just of getting that technique down and also learning to when to be back into his net, being on top of the crease for him. It's definitely been beneficial for him on when to have those reads for him there in his crease. And I mean, special teams. I mean, I don't know what to make of 9 power play goals still in this preseason, but hey, it's great to at least see them light the lamp so much in this part of the season for that, and also just the fact that it's not the whole complementary of what you're going to see in power play 1. The structure of movement, getting to the net, tapping the puck in the corner so that you can go to battle, get it back, and then quickly get it to the middle for a screen. I mean, that's just following the structure of what Jamie Compton is trying to teach these guys up and down, whether you're a prospect going in or you're one of the guys like a Sam Reinhart or Carter Verhaeghe for them in this lineup. But still great to see that they're putting 9 goals on the power play, and that still for the Panthers, even on the PK side of things, that Anton Lundell and Attila Storena are taking those responsibilities too, and also Anton Lundell taking that responsibility of having a different winger on his line, and then during the contract negotiations for him, I'm sure the conversation was like this: you're gonna have to be a role model now. You may be 23 years old. By the way, happy birthday, Anton Lundell. Today's his birthday. The fact that he's a role model at this age, being a Stanley Cup champion, so just shortly after him being drafted, it's just so much growth for him in this role after just transitioning from Finland to here, even though it's pro hockey over there for him out there. But we're gonna transition over to segment number 3, where we are going to discuss and ask: will the Charlotte Checkers actually be deeper this time around over the last few years? We are going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page when you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Once again, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And you can do that all at FanDuel.com. Segment number 3 here on this Wednesday, October 2nd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Winans Wednesday edition of the show, but on a Thursday, past midnight here on the East Coast here in Florida. But Jacob, I just want to discuss more about really the present and future for the Florida Panthers here with everything that we've seen just over this preseason. There's still so much excitement, even though guys who haven't signed their ELCs, and Grayson Sawchron and Hunter St. Martin, who we will see in Charlotte soon. And who knows, maybe they build up their game so much to the point that they become a valuable trade piece if the Panthers decide to go for it. I hate to put that thought out there, because sometimes as fans, we like to attach ourselves to prospects. But hey, it's just like Game of Thrones, Jacob. Don't attach yourself to a character, right?
Never do that.
Don't ever do that. So if you watch that show and you've learned, try to apply this to the Panthers. By the way, I said at the top of the show, the Panthers trimmed their roster to 39 players. Wilmer Skoog, Oliver Akuliar, and Ryan McAllister were the 3 guys who were sent to AHL Charlotte. So those are the 3 from when we last spoke to you on 42 players to 39. So
all guys who had great preseasons, by the way. All 3 of those guys performed very well in this preseason.
No doubt. And that begs the question, man. I know it's crazy because we spoke about Zac Dalpe earlier, who didn't really get an opportunity with the big club last year. And Paul Maurice even spoke about his honesty with Zac Dalpe. And the fact that the Panthers, going into this, they were thinner on paper, but now that we're seeing games on the ice and that we have things to see with our eyes, there is that possibility that everything that we were discussing with depleted farm and Bill Zito, his approach and going back to the tweet that I posted about just going for it in the trade deadline of 2022, but then making up for it by late round picks of Davies, Vilmanis, Patrick Giles, and everything. I mean, there is that possibility of Charlotte being so much deeper. But then I did speak during development camp that there could be pressure on Jordy Kinnear because of the fact that there's a Stanley Cup championship there, and that you still have to try to replenish the talent to bring them up in case there's an injury. And the thing is, the Panthers having to be so tight with the cap. which the latest projection is a very, very early projection for next year being $92.5 million, which the average contract that you're giving out for spots to fill is actually higher than last year. But you have your core, but you still have to do something about number 1D in case Ekblad walks. You still have to do something about a possible Verhaeghe extension for a 40 goal scorer too. And also for the Panthers, their prize prospect in Mackie Semiskevich, who is no longer yellow non-contact jersey for him. I don't think he's going back there neither. So I see this as a big opportunity for Jordy Kinnear. But at the same, and I think the checkers are going to be fun. But how are you viewing from your lens of what you've seen this preseason? How are you viewing AHL Charlotte, even though the full roster hasn't been fully put together?
Yeah, so I think they've got a really good chance to be a playoff contender again. Now we see in the AHL a lot of time, like the teams that contend and win the Calder Cup are usually teams that are loaded with veterans, AHL veterans. So you look at a team like the Hershey Bears have been dominant past couple years in the AHL. Their team is usually not loaded with prospects. It's usually loaded with veterans. Panthers system is a little bit different right now. It's pretty much loaded with prospects who are going to need ice time for development. So you want to temper your expectations just a little bit when you consider that.
Yeah.
But if you look at just the talent there, the Panthers have a really good shot at having a really, really good AHL team there in Charlotte this year because there's so much talent. And once these guys get comfortable, they could really develop into a force at the minor league level. And we talk about depth, where the Panthers haven't really been able to spend big on depth pieces or anything. You got to keep the team together. With that comes a lot. You get quantity over quality, so to speak.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of good role players, but you don't necessarily have like a massive prize prospect future superstar that's coming up through the AHL. And that the Panthers are not in a situation where that's what they need. What they need are quality, young, future depth players that can fill those holes on the third and fourth line as guys move on. You can't always pay your fourth liners to stay. You saw that in Stenlund, Lomberg, Cousins. These are the kind of guys you'd love to keep around, but you can't always do it, and you have to find guys who can replace those type of roles. It's a lot easier to find that later in drafts than it is to find a home run first line player who, of course, you could find that, but that's not really what you end up looking for. So there's a lot of young talent that's going to be there, and if you just talk about depth, there's going to be probably the most competition up and down the pipeline that we've ever seen. Just look at the goaltending situation in Charlotte. You're going to likely have Chris Drieger. They just signed Keith Kincaid to an AHL deal.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have Matt Guzdo trying to fight for starts. You're going to have Cooper Black who wants to get in there for starts. It's a good problem to have, but these are all guys who are going to want AHL minutes. Are going to be vying for AHL minutes. Nobody wants to get sent to the ECHL. It's not necessarily a bad thing. You get good minutes, you get professional hockey time, but if you can play at the AHL, you want to play in the AHL. It's closer to the NHL. The defense, Megna's probably going to go down. You think Hovorka is going to go down. Kiersted's likely to go back down. Balinskis has probably secured his spot in the NHL, so that means Bjornfoot, if he clears waivers, is probably going back down.
Mm-hmm.
Already, that's 4 guys right there who are borderline NHL talents that are going to be vying for minutes. And then already down, you have Mike Benning, who's going to be looking for time. Like it's a good problem to have, but these are a lot of guys who are going to be scrapping and fighting and competing for that AHL playing time. And the same thing goes with the forwards. I mean, it would take the rest of the show for me to name all the forwards who are likely to be competing for playing time in Charlotte. But the point is that a lot of these guys are fringe NHL players who could be on NHL rosters in many places and could be playing third and fourth line minutes for Charlotte. When talent wise, they could be on any NHL fourth line. Great problem to have. It's great to have competition up and down the pipeline of the NHL all the way down to the ECHL. But it's definitely going to look a little different in Charlotte. Not so much reliance on those AHL only guys, the guys who are on deals that are just with Charlotte. It's going to be a lot more of Panther contracted players, and development's going to be key. So my eyes are firmly on the coaching staff down there to see what we can get out of them.
Yeah, and you think about for the Panthers in this situation where, let's say you're at a poker table and then you just have more chips at your disposal for them, and like you said, we're none of the guys, at least from what we're expecting to be in Charlotte, are just going to go right in and then be in the top 6 and then lead the Panthers in score. And that's not the situation that the farm is in. Also, I also don't want to put too much stock in record too for the farm. So it's just really about one person at a time and seeing who's gonna be fitting. And also, let's also not forget that when you're a championship team and that you go through the process of training camp and you're going to put guys through waivers because they're a Stanley Cup champion, someone's going to get claimed. Someone will. You want a little piece of that championship. You want a little bit of what they're saying in the locker room, in and out. What does Paul Maurice say? What are the practices like in South Florida? You're going to get some of that. I mean, hell, last year, I mean, even someone like Mike Riley didn't play too much for the Panthers, but when you have a squeeze like for a team that's trying to contend, someone is eventually gonna, unfortunately, be let go in that situation for the Panthers. I mean, even with the goaltending a few years ago, I mean, look at what Sam Montembeault is doing in Montreal now. He's their number one too. And I mean, there could have been a chance, but it was just the situation here in Florida just wasn't. He wasn't gonna be fast tracked to starting games too. So that's gonna be another situation for the Panthers. And I think like I said, we attach ourselves to players, but look at this as a good thing if the Panthers do get guys claimed off of if other teams claim a Panthers player off of waivers. Your thoughts on that before we sign off for the night?
Yeah, I think it's very likely that someone will get claimed. Like Toby Bjornfoot, for example, was with the Panthers for that entire Cup run. He didn't play, but he was with the team in the entire Cup run. He was in the room. He was part of the practices. He was part of everything that went on with that. And he's got a lot of natural talent. Mm-hmm. I would not be shocked to see someone claim him. And if that happens, it sucks. It's tough. You lose some of your defensive depth, but the Panthers have built something now where that's a spot they're confident they can fill. If they're 8th D, if someone goes down, they need to call up a player. I feel like they feel confident in what they have there. It's inevitable. It's part of the game. But let's also not forget that Bill Zito tends to have at least a waiver claim or two this time of year. If the right talent comes along and he has his eyes on someone who could help the team either immediately or down the line, he's not going to hesitate to put in a claim. Think Gus Forsling, you think Josh Mahura. There's always going to be those waiver claims that Bill Zito has his eye on. And we can also discuss the fact that what they have in Charlotte right now is not necessarily what they're going to have in Charlotte at the end of the year. Yep. If certain players develop quickly or show or flash skills, and the Panthers need to make a move at the deadline, like you said, don't get attached to these prospects. They could be on the move. By the same token, there's a guy that the Panthers have right now in Jack Devine, who, when his college season ends, he could be added to Charlotte towards the end of the year in a playoff run. And as the college season winds down, Bill Zito is known for signing college free agents. Does it every single year. I don't know that there's been a year that he's been the general manager where he didn't sign an undrafted college free agent. And he's also been known to bring guys over from overseas. Every year he's signing someone from the Czech league or from another league in Europe, whether it's for an immediate contract or a future contract. So I have full confidence in the Panthers correctly managing the pipeline as far as talent acquisition. And that's not a concern for me. My concern is just I want to see the coaching staff develop them properly there in Charlotte and see guys a little bit more NHL ready when they graduate to the NHL. So we'll see how Mackey does. We'll see if they've succeeded with his development. It's been tough. He's been injured. Haven't really gotten to see a ton of Mackey in camp, but the talent is there. We know that. We'll see how he fills in. And like you said with Lundell, a young player himself, but he's not being paid to be a passenger. He's being paid to drive that line. So we'll see what he's able to do and with increased responsibility. And again, it's an exciting time. It's exciting to see this. And a lot of these things will determine how long the Panthers Cup window stays open.
Yeah, no doubt. And that is going to be the fun part of just not just playoff runs and highlight reel goals, but just really the build of everything. Even though, yeah, they won the Stanley Cup, but just the continuing on and just making it something so sustainable throughout, and just for knowing that it's a program that up and down, there's no drama, no stability, just players coming in and being part of the culture here in South Florida for the Florida Panthers. But Jacob, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, where as we recap this 2-1 win for the Florida Panthers and a deeper conversation into the Panthers farm. Tell everybody where they can follow you online, my friend.
Yep, you can follow me on X at Jacob Winans 8, and next time you see me and Armando together, it'll be regular season. We'll be talking about a real hockey game. So that's exciting to think about.
We'll be breaking down a banner raising ceremony and opening night for the Panthers against the Bruins. So that's going to be a very fun upcoming Winans Wednesday. So thank you, my friend. Thank you so much, my friend. And I will see you very soon.
Awesome. Can't wait. Thanks.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast so you'll be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.